Let's face it, at some point, every knitter or crocheter has to go through the agonizing decision of taking a naughty project, it knows what it did, and unraveling it or ripping it back so that they can reclaim the yarn and reknit the project or reuse it for something else. But what do you do if that project has already been washed and blocked, maybe even several times, and when you unravel the yarn, it looks like this? Today on Tip Jar Tutorial, I'm going to show you how to revive spaghetti yarn and turn it into a brand new shiny ball of yarn that you'll just be, I won't say itching, you'll be excited to knit with one more time. Follow me into the Maker's Lounge and we'll get after resetting raveled yarn. You've come to the conclusion that your naughty project needs to be unraveled or frogged. So you got to take a visit to the frog pond. Now, why do knitters and crocheters call it frogging when they rip back their work? Because frogs say, rip it, rip it. I know, it's silly, but it's part of the knitting vernacular. If you're not familiar with it, now you know. It's frogging. So for the rest of this video, we're going to call it frogging because that's how knitters talk. And we all want to talk like knitters, don't we? We are knitters, crocheters, we're makers. We are in this game to play. Oh, I might cut that out. It was ridiculous. Anyway, your project's been sitting for a while, and you can see on this one that I need to undo. This one isn't too bad. It's a little squiggly. I could probably get away with reknitting that without doing anything, without having to reset it, because once I roll it into a ball and it sits for a while, it's a little bit kinky, but it's not too bad. And I could probably tolerate that, although I'm likely to reset this yarn anyway because I am fuss budgety. But if you've frogged back and your yarn looks like this bit of, you remember back in the 80s? Some of you who were there back in the 80s, do you remember hair crimpers? Like, this is kind of what we're dealing with here. And you can see like how much this yarn is crimped. It is kind of fun to play with it, I'll admit. It's a little bit fun, but there's no way I'm going to knit with this yarn like this for a couple of reasons. You may be brave enough to knit with a yarn like this, but I have learned the hard way that it is not a good idea. First of all, it very easily tangles and grabs and wraps around itself when it's all curly like this. So there's that. It's just going to be a pain in the neck to work with. But the other thing that happens is if you knit with yarn that is already in a knitted shape, it's going to want to retain that knitted shape as you're knitting. So unless you are the tightest knitter in the world, as you knit with this yarn, it's going to look okay while you're wrapping it around the needle, but as soon as you jump off the needle, it's going to want to go back to this springy thing that it's doing. And lots of times there's going to be extra yarn in some of those stitches, and then your tension gets all wonky. This is a sweater that I reworked. This is my Lionheart sweater by Jane Richmond. The original sweater had a hoodie, you see here, with a split down the middle, and I decided I didn't like the hoodie anymore. I wanted the hoodie gone. So I took the hoodie off, and then I had to, in order to turn this into a V-neck, I had to frog this yoke back. It was bottom up, fortunately, not top down. Don't attempt this if it's top down, it won't work. So I had to frog it back to the point where I wanted to start the V-neck and knit it back up again. So the first time I did this, I just frogged it back and then I re-knit back up with the yarn, and it pretty much looked like this because it had been blocked and washed several times, and that yarn was set in place into the shape of pearls and knits. It was set. And I knit it up and I took a look at it, and oh my goodness. Now, I have pretty good tension. My stitches are pretty even. There are days when I'd say my knitting looks like machine knitting. Humble brag. Okay, not so humble brag. However, it really looked awful. It was like some of them were tight and some of them were loose. It looked like I'd been knitting with my eyes closed under the influence of too many martinis. And I know that I'm crazy and I drink martinis while I'm knitting, but only ever one, never more than that. Anyway, I ended up having to frog it back again, and taking that yarn, I cut it, I took that frogged yarn and I reset it the way I'm going to show you today, so that when I re-knit it back up, all of the tension and stitches look the same and beautiful. It's worth taking the time to do this. Okay, so moving right along. When you're frogging, how are we going to go about this? So the first thing you can do, there's two ways to do this, depending on whether or not you have a yarn swift. Here's a picture of some yarn that I frogged and is on the swift, right? So the swift holds the yarn out in a hank shape so that you can work with it. If you don't have one of those, you could wind it directly onto a thing called a nitty knotty, and here's a picture of a nitty knotty. You could also wind it around your elbow. Here, I don't know. I don't think I have the end. I don't know what I've done. I don't have the end. Anyway, so profesh today. So you can do this to make a hank. You can wind it around your thumb and around your elbow to make a hank. But you might get really, really tired if you have like 400 yards of yarn to do this with. It might be a little challenging. You could put it on the back of a chair, unwind it. You can ask a friend to volunteer for their arms or feet and wind it that way. Or you could use your own feet. I think I've done this when I was really desperate. Or the other thing you can do is you can simply wind it into a ball as you're frogging your project. And this is actually something I do a lot, because I find sometimes if I'm watching TV, I'm watching something really interesting or engaging and I need all of my attention, or 90% of it anyway, on the television, that frogging and winding into a ball while I watch TV can be quite relaxing. I still feel like I'm getting something accomplished. See, this is going to happen sometimes when you frog. You're going to end up with little fuzzy pill blobs attached to your yarn. So every once in a while, you just want to pull those off. Okay, so you get it wound into a ball first, and then you're going to have to do the thing where you ask a friend for their feet, or you put it on a swift. This is where I usually transfer it to my swift, or the back of a chair. The back of a chair works well, or your arm, or a nitty knotty, or whatever you've got, so that you get it into a hank like this. Then you are going to want to tie it in several places, because you don't just want loose yarn in a loop. We're gonna soak this in water, and we don't think that it's going to stay nice and tidy in the water. The minute you touch it, it's going to turn into a tangled mess. And untangling dry yarn is tolerable. Sometimes I kind of even like doing it. Untangling wet yarn is a big no. So we want to tie this up to secure it. And anytime that you have bought a hank of yarn, so let me just grab one. Here's one right here. And you've opened it up like this, you will see that it has been tied loosely in sort of a figure 8 pattern. Can you see that? So it's not just tied once all the way around. The tie actually goes through the middle to break it up a little bit. It just is more secure. It's going to stay in place around the yarn. And you don't want to tie that yarn up tight, because again, we're trying to leave it in a natural, relaxed, comfortable, smooth, happy state. And if we're going to tie it really tight with a tie, we're going to put a kink in it right there. And we don't want to do that. We're trying to get rid of the kinks. Okay, clear as mud? Good. I will do that later. I'm in the middle of a tutorial here. Okay. So once you've got it all neatly tied, and I will tie it in at least 4 places. So this guy is tied over here and tied over here, and I need to add 2 more ties to this one to really secure it. Then you're going to take this baby and you're going to dunk it in a sink or a tub or whatever you use for washing your hand knits, of water. Just any old tepid room temperature kind of water will do. What I usually do is I put the plug in, I turn the hot tap on, and I let the water run, because it runs cold for quite a while, and then it starts to run hot. So I'll just keep my hand in there, and as soon as the water is finally turned hot, I don't know about your house, but in my house it takes a while for the hot water to show up. I let the hot water run in a little bit, just till that water is like no temperature. It's not hot. It is neither hot nor cold. It's kind of no temperature. And then I turn it off. And you'll want to add a bit of wool wash. So either soak, I really like soak, or Eucalan, I really like Eucalan. If you have a wool wash that you really love, please let me and the folks know down in the comment section which one you like, and if there's particular scents you like, or unscented, or maybe something completely different, let me know. I'm always interested. Okay, so you're going to put it in there, you can see it in here, and let it soak at least an hour. Like, give it time to really relax. When you first put it in there, it is still going to look very kinky, and after a while you'll go back and you can give it a little tug and stretch it out, and you'll see those fibers start to go, oh, I'm really liking this not so hot tub. And they get all relaxed and smooth. When the yarn in the wash has become completely relaxed, you can pull it out, give it a gentle squeeze like that to get the excess water out, roll it in a towel to get more excess water out, and then what I usually do is I take it and I hang it over a hanger like you see here, and then I'll hang it up somewhere where it can dry. And every so often I'll go and like turn the yarn on the hanger a bit, because what will happen, of course, is the water will run down and kind of pool at the bottom. This part will be dry, this part will be super wet. So I just give it a little bit of a turn. It just tends to dry a bit more evenly and faster. At least that's my theory. If you're a scientist and you're like, Nicole, you're out of your mind, it's not going to make any difference. Like, okay, fine. However, hang it up on the hanger and just let it dry. Let it completely dry. And then you will have a lovely hank of reset yarn that you can then hand wind into a tidy little ball, or put on your ball winder. You can put the whole hank back on your Swift, or back on the chair, or back on someone's feet, and wind up your crinkly yarn. So this is exactly this yarn. I took a hank just like this kinky hank, and I reset it and turned it into this. Isn't that beautiful? That yarn I frogged, because I talked about this in my transforming shawls tutorial. I talked about taking this lovely sequence knit shawl that I did and shortening it, and then picking up the stitches on the edge and adding out. So that's why I have frogged and reset this yarn. I'm actually going to turn it into something. So I thought while I was doing that, might be a good idea to show you how, because you may be out there frogging your own shawls to transform them into beautiful wrapovers. And I thought you might want to know. All right, so there you go. Ta-da! Brand new refreshed yarn, good as new, like nothing ever happened. And when do you get to do that in your life, hey? When do you get to just completely undo something that went wrong and start all over again fresh with no consequences, except maybe you used up some extra knitting time? But we all love knitting or crocheting, right? So who cares that we spent a little extra time? So there you are. This really only takes a couple of days, and it's worth it. Thanks for being here today. Again, I'm Nicole from the Knicoleknits Under the Influence podcast, in case this is the first time you've seen me. If you learned something today or you enjoyed my little wacky tutorial, please give me a thumbs up down there. Just click on that thumbs up button. Please subscribe if you haven't subscribed already, so you can see more of my content pop up in your YouTube feeds. And we'll see you next week for episode 9 of the Knicoleknits Under the Influence podcast. Boy, I tell you, some of these days, I don't need to be under the influence of anything. Anyway, thanks for being here. See you soon. Bye.